Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a list of some fantasy standalones. Last year, when I was doing my stats, if you will, I was really surprised to see how many books I had read that were fantasy standalones, because in my mind, I always think that there aren't that many out there. And so I decided to sit down and make a list of all of the fantasy standalones I have read, and I ended up having so many that this video is going to be broken up into 3 separate videos. That way I can give you a little bit more details about each of the individual books. That said, I'm just going to jump right into it. The first book on this list is an adult fantasy, and it is, I always describe a hint boring, but I think it's beautifully written, and I think that there's so much to it that makes it so rich, and the story is so captivating, and that would be The Queens of Innisleer by Tessa Gratton. This is a King Lear retelling, and you follow 3 sisters, one of which is very loyal to her father, who is going mad, and then the other 2 sisters believe that their father was responsible for their mother's death, so they're not exactly fans of him. And you, the entire book, don't really know if he did indeed kill the queen or not, but it is coming time for there to be a new ruler, and because all of the daughters are daughters and he has no sons, there's a little bit of issue as far as who is going to take the throne, because they have to have a man ruling technically, and he has the one daughter who he favors, but in order for her to get the throne, she would have to marry someone, and she just wants to be loyal to her father, do what she can, help take care of him as he's sort of losing his mind a little bit, whereas the other sisters have bonded together and they are determined to take the throne for themselves. It is a lot of familial drama, and it's not exactly an action-packed read by any means. It's not really something similar to a Brandon Sanderson book or Lightbringer or anything like that. It's a lot of this person is going over here and they're trying to manipulate this person, and then this random guy has some kind of effect on things that are going on. There's so many little intricacies that end up playing a big role later on, so you do have to kind of pay attention to who's doing what. But even though I always say the book is a little boring, I say that because it is a little slower paced. If you really appreciate Laini Taylor's writing, I wouldn't say it's quite to that extent. I would say most of the time it, makes sense. It's not quite so metaphorical, but it still has that touch, that sprinkle of being pretty for the sake of pretty, and I know some people really love that. And if you like the familial drama, if you like really in-depth characters who are very nuanced, if you like seeing a story where the personal things that are affecting the individual characters are so heartbreaking, but in these small, quiet ways, not necessarily end of the world kind of ways, it's a very contained story, but I think you would really like it. Next up, we have Wicked Fox by Kat Cho. This is sort of a standalone. There is a companion novel to this, but this book by itself is completed. And I was really surprised because I thought this was just going to be a delicious, nonstop fun kind of book, and it really wasn't that. So it kind of was marketed as a Korean drama, and there's Korean fantastical elements woven into the story, so it's more of, our world, but with these other things tied in, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it, but I thought it was going to be more of that drama where I almost like reality TV, but I was really surprised because while it is addictive and you do kind of constantly want to turn the page to see what's going to happen next, it also got pretty deep. There's definitely a lot of exploration when it comes to abandonment and the kinds of ways in which somebody who has been abandoned in the past would have to deal with that, and sort of having more, let's just say, not particularly kind parents, the effect that has on someone. I do think that this one has a little hint of, oh my gosh, and then this thing happened, and then, oh my gosh, no way, but then this thing happened. So it definitely still has that juicy drama in it, but I really was surprised at the fact that it also explored some of these deeper themes. I also just absolutely loved the way that the Korean folklore was tied into the story, and the setup is that you have a character who is half human, half nine-tailed fox, and they sort of feed off of people, but they don't really want to necessarily, and so you see them trying to acclimate to being a regular person, but kind of trying and failing, and the friendship that develops in their efforts to be more like a person. It was good. I quite enjoyed it. Next up, we have Nameless Queen. This particular one is, I think, perfect for somebody who is transitioning out of middle grade into young adult fantasy. It doesn't have any romance in it. It is a very familiar story. We follow a character who is a little bit more of a lowborn in a society that has a caste system, and through some unusual circumstances, they end up inheriting the throne, and so then they're trying to navigate all of the political rivals that come from having a throne. So it's not the most unique. We've definitely seen a lot of the tropes that come up in this story before, but I think, like I said, it is perfect for somebody who has never really read a whole lot of young adult and they're looking for something that doesn't have a ton of sexy stuff in it, like the sexy fae kind of stories that we see a lot of in young adult fantasy. Not that that's all YA books are, but it doesn't have that romantic subplot. It's very much found family, friendship, and good versus bad, trying to do the right thing, the underdog trying to rise to the top, rise to the occasion. So I think it's perfect for that. And also, even if you're an adult and you just want to read something that is cozy and familiar, and it's a story that you can maybe predict a little bit, but you're just in the mood for that, then this book is gonna absolutely fit. Next up, we have Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong. This book, it's quite heartbreaking. If you're in the mood for something that pulls at all the emotions, this one's gonna do it. When you first start off the book, you follow two main characters. You follow Misaki and Mamoru. And Misaki is Mamoru's mother, which is a different dynamic than you see quite often in fantasy. You don't usually get a mother and her son. He is a teenager, and he's finding out that perhaps the things he has been taught are not quite what they seem. There might be a little bit of propaganda going on, a little bit of kind of brainwashing going on, because his island is supposed to be the main defense to protect the mainland. And so it's kind of been ingrained within his people that they need to be warriors. They need to have very pure bloodlines, because the purer the bloodline, the stronger the magic, which is necessary to fight for their people and keep their people safe if they're ever attacked. And maybe there's a chance that war is coming, but people aren't necessarily being told everything. The things that happen in this book really truly are heartbreaking, and the beginning of the book feels a little on the nose. The world building is a little obvious, but once you get a couple hundred pages in, that's when things start to happen. That's when the emotions start to come about, because you see the effects of war, you see the effects of propaganda, and it's really a very different story than you get in a lot of fantasy. And while I didn't love the beginning, and I didn't love the very end of the book, that middle, the main chunk of the book, really, truly, very, very good. Next up, we have House of Salt and Sorrows. This book is, it's a YA fantasy horror. It's a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling, and apparently a lot of people are familiar with this story because of the Barbie version. This is not at all like the Barbie version. This is creepy. Now, I will admit that I get scared quite easily, but I have some friends that like to read thrillers and horror books, and they said it's scary too, so it's not just me. This book follows a character who has a ton of sisters, and a bunch of them keep dying. Their mom died. They live in this kind of creepy manor by the sea. People think they're cursed, and you start to kind of wonder, are they cursed? Because their sisters keep dying. And so as the story progresses, things start getting creepier and creepier. And there was a moment where things got so absurd and crazy. And then I was like, what? And then I was like, I don't know. And then as we kept going, then I'm like, wait, but is it though? And I really appreciated, it's hard to say, of course, because I can't give specifics, but it kind of tells you what's going on, and then you're like, but is that what's going on? And then you kind of can't tell. And the fact that even I was wondering, okay, is this girl just crazy, or is this magic? Or you start to question, is the narrator reliable? Is this all actually happening? Are they hallucinating? Is it all in their head? I really like when a book can trick me like that, or at least, at the very least, make me question. And I definitely had that experience. It is a little ridiculous. It is very tropey. There's a little bit of a love triangle. And just the fact that there's so much going on, and then at the same time they're like, but this boy is so cute. The fact that that stuff is going on simultaneously is, you know, it is what it is. But it was super entertaining. Definitely a good book to read. You know, if you, well, I was going to say it's a good book to read if you are up late at night, you're the only one who's awake. But at the same time, it might be a terrible book to read if that's the case. Maybe you need all the lights on and you need like all your pets and your roommates and everything around you. But either way, I thought it was a lot of fun. Next up, we have Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. I do highly recommend that you read the original First Law trilogy before reading this one, as there are tie-ins that are not only going to make more sense if you have read First Law, but overall, I just think they make the scenes very different. The scenes have different tones, or you feel like you're in on an inside joke if you have read the First Law trilogy first. But if you have read the First Law trilogy, or if you really, really, really just want to read Best Served Cold by itself, this book, so I recently read it, and I do find, after having read 4 Abercrombie books at this point, that there are some things that for me have become Abercrombie-esque. So there's certain things I can almost predict are going to happen, which I would basically say, hey, what's the worst thing that could happen? That's probably going to be what happens. But it is grimdark, I think, at its best, where it's very violent, it's very bloody, it's very in your face. It does not hide anything, it doesn't sugarcoat anything, it doesn't romanticize anything. Everybody sucks, basically, but you can't help but root for these people anyway. And at its core, Best Served Cold, as the name implies, is a revenge story. It definitely is one of those books where it's like, oh, but like, revenge is meaningless. And you're like, yeah, I know, but like, darn it if I don't want Monza to get revenge. And then as she's going, you're kind of like, Monza, you don't need to get revenge. I don't know if you really need to get revenge. Things aren't going so well. But you sort of still want her to anyway. And the characters, in typical Abercrombie fashion, are so real. They feel like such real people. Their personalities, you know them immediately. You know what they're going to do. You know what they're going to think. You know what they're going to say. And it's also very funny. It's very dark. It's very explicit. But on the other hand, it's hilarious at the same time. I really had a good time reading this, even though there were a couple things that I found a little predictable. But overall, fantastic. Last for today's video, like I said, there will be additional videos to go with this, but last for today would be To Kill a Kingdom. This is a slightly dark Little Mermaid retelling, which sounds kind of stupid to say anyway, because the Little Mermaid that most of us think of is already based on something else. So I think you guys get what I mean, though. It is a Little Mermaid-esque story where we have a character who is supposed to be getting the hearts of men, that is, the siren mermaid character, and then you get the male point of view as well, and they're kind of this cool pirate type character, and then they have to go on an adventure together, and he doesn't really know what's up with her, and she's kind of starting to like him, but then of course things are just like slightly darker than you would expect. This is basically the kind of book I was describing that Nameless Queen is not. But if you're looking for just a fun retelling that's a little darker than maybe the Disney version, and you just want that juicy, fun, can read in a night, can read in a weekend sort of book, this one is definitely going to fit that. That's it for today's fantasy standalones. I'll have any reviews or other videos where I go a little more in depth with the books mentioned in the description bar down below. Definitely let me know your thoughts on these books. Like I said, I'll have those other standalone videos coming out soon. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.